Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
Time to work on your gift list with Black Friday deals at the Home Depot. Right now, get a select tool from top brands like Ryobi and Milwaukee for free when you buy a select battery kit. Choose from reciprocating saws, multi-tools, sanders, and more. Whether you're stocking up on power for your personal workshop or grabbing the perfect gift for someone else's. Get Black Friday tool deals delivered from the Home Depot. Limit 1 per transaction. Exclusions apply. Full eligible tool list in-store and online.
Hey there, Duke fans, and welcome to episode number 662 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. We are coming to you on November 13th, 2024, and unfortunately, for the first time of the 2024-25 season, we are here to recap a loss for Duke basketball. I am Donald Wine. I am your host for this episode. I have Jason Evans with me. Jason was in the building last night. We will talk a little bit about your experience there, but just give me the short. How was it other than the actual game?
I mean, it was such a great time. We took a bunch of pictures and stuff because it was a class of '89 reunion. We had just a bunch of guys who we all lived in the same dorm freshman year, and some folks brought like a spouse, some folks brought a kid, but for the most part, it was just these guys who bonded over drinking beer and other stuff like that. Many decades ago, and we all got together. It was the first time for most of us getting together like that since we graduated in '89, and it was amazing. Even though the game didn't turn out the way we wanted, obviously, every single person said it was a great time, and I will advocate for something. So ordinarily, when you go to a game with friends, you guys get a bunch of seats. We got a suite, which meant we could all really be together. Like if there were 14 of us in a row of seats, the guy in seat number 1 and seat number 14 are never going to interact. They're just not.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the guy in seat number 1 and seat number 5 aren't going to interact. That's just a lot of, but by having a suite, cost some money, but it was worth it. It was 100% worth it. And we just had an amazing time. Even when the game ended, we were all like, this was still like highlight of the year kind of stuff.
You're supposed to get seats in bunches, not in a row. Several in 5 in one row, 5 in the other. But I digress. We also, speaking of rows, being able to interact with more than one person, we have a third person on this show for the first time on the 2024-25 season since the stats game. If you're counting in the stats game, this is number 1 for Sam Klein. Sam Klein, what's up, man?
Hey guys, Jason, I'm jealous. Even though Duke lost, I'm jealous that you were at the game yesterday. I have been to the Champions Classic before. I went, I think I've only been once to the Champions Classic. I went in Chicago, if you guys might recall, when I know Grayson Allen, it was the game when Grayson Allen destroyed Michigan State. And I was there with some friends.
Quite a memory.
And as I recall, I had a very fun night that night. The thing about the Champions Classic is it's kind of like going to the Final Four, but it's in a basketball arena because you got the 4 fan bases. I mean, like it obviously doesn't have the same stakes because it's not the postseason, it's early in the season, but you've got, 4 big fan bases, and Kentucky in particular is going to show up everywhere. And the amount of Duke and Kansas and Michigan State will somewhat vary depending on the location of the game. But so you're always going to have a great atmosphere. You're always going to get 2 good, pretty much every year you get 2 good games out of the thing. I know that the Michigan State game wasn't, it wasn't like close all the way to the end, but at least like they're 2 good teams. It was fun. It was fun to see. And unlike the Final Four, it's still played in a basketball arena. So you get the intimacy of a normal basketball game or an NBA basketball game with I think the quality of play that you normally get in a Final Four. So I think going to the Champions Classic, whatever year you, the listener, get to do it is so worth it. Whether you're in a suite or in the nosebleeds or anything, it's an awesome time.
Yeah, I'd say last night, and I thought about this a little bit. I really looked carefully at the crowd, there were not a lot of Michigan State fans there. Now, maybe part of it is Kansas fans, Duke fans, Kentucky fans are all going to be wearing shades of blue, oftentimes the same shade of blue. There was not a lot of green. Let's.
They're outside of Chicago, and maybe like there's a couple of years where it was like
Indy, when they played
Indianapolis.
it in Indy,
Yeah,
then you'll get that, but not as much other places.
Well, and also in fairness to them, Michigan State program has been down a little bit lately. There have been people talking about, the Champions Classic at Michigan State, like should we maybe Gonzaga, maybe UConn, that there are other programs that you would potentially sub out. That's not the way this is done. It's not picked on an annual basis. These teams all signed a contract collectively together with ESPN and other promoters and such. But in any event, I thought last night in the stadium, I would say it was about 10% Michigan State, maybe 15% Kansas, Duke at like 25 or 30%, and then the rest, somewhere around 45% at least, was Kentucky fans. I will freely admit that when Duke and Kentucky were jousting back and forth, the Kentucky fans were louder than the Duke fans were. The Duke,
you
there was
can
definitely
hear
more
that on
Duke.
TV too.
Yeah, there was more Duke than there was Kansas, but Kentucky outnumbered us.
Even in 2015, when I went to the Final Four, when, as you'll recall, Duke beat Wisconsin, but Wisconsin had beaten Kentucky in the.
Yeah.
It was actually almost a Champions Classic at the Final Four that year. I went to the national championship game. There were almost as many Kentucky fans at the national championship game as there were Duke fans, even though Kentucky wasn't playing. Kentucky fans are actually built different.
I mean, they travel. We knew that, and unfortunately, they get to go home with the win and the gloating, at least for now. But I will say, we saw a lot in this game where I'm sure, and I talked to, I have some Kentucky fans. All of them unprompted said, "Yo, I never want to play y'all again." So let's start first with the headlines from this game. And Jason, I'm going to start with a couple.
Wait,
I'm going to start with a couple.
Can I do them?
No. Here's how we do it.
No.
I'm going to start with a couple, and then we will get to a couple that you will probably want to read. But I want to start with a couple that define this game a little bit. First, Michael Slaughter. He wrote, "From woes to woes, woes like as in like whoa to whoa. Devils can't close against longtime foes." I like rhyming. I like alliteration. I like that one. John Grantland had a nice one. He wrote several, as he always does, but he wrote, "Cat call. Experience matters and cramps don't help as Duke falls to Kentucky." And then there was a couple that I thought were pretty cool. Corbin Vanderwedge had Pope performs exorcism as Devils cast outplayed by cats. And then Eric Blumenfeld did not know that this was a double entendre, but it turned out to be. His was Devils' ironic embrace of hero ball leads to first loss. Hero spelled Heroo, as in Tyler Hero, who played at Kentucky, who similarly had a ridiculous game for the Miami Heat last night.
He had 40 points.
Only for the Heat to fall short due to a coaching brain fart in overtime to the Pistons. So now, Jason.
Well, wait.
On the last show. Yeah,
hold on. Before we get to that, and we will get to that, there are a couple others you missed. You didn't do Bobby Weinberger. 3 balls stink. The bench does shrink. Growing pains leave Duke on the brink. I thought that was a good one. Bart Hooper, Duke battered, bullied, and beaten by Bluegrass. Nice alliteration there by Bart. Mm-hmm. And Ben Powell had a pretty good one. Flag gets carded, and he spelled it CARR, like the Andrew Carr of the formerly of Wake Forest, and performed excellently for Kentucky last night. So flag gets carded. Young Devils missed the bar in first true test. Now we will get to, we had numerous headlines that pointed something out. Sam, I'm not sure if you listened to the preview podcast. Did you listen to our preview episode?
No, I did not. Although I am now resubscribed thanks to my friend Devin, who listened to the show and texted me and told me how to get the RSS feedback.
Just in time.
Yeah.
Just in time.
So on the preview, I went ahead and said something that looks phenomenally stupid now in retrospect. I was like, I think this Duke team isn't going to have a bad 3-point shooting game.
Curious.
I had my reasons for saying that. My reasons have been now defeated, and we got headlines, including Risa Brundney, who literally, the moment the game ended, sent a headline that was Jason Evans publicly embarrassed. She's right. And we also got Scott Norton, who wrote Jason's jinx, Duke dreadful from downtown in loss. Scott and Risa were not the only ones to point out to me last night. My phone was blowing up with people saying, what the F were you saying about Duke not having a bad shooting night? And then we promptly, immediately have an abysmally bad shooting night. This one's on me, everybody. I know folks are blaming Cooper Flagg and John Shire, the refs, a lot of other stuff. Bring it on. This one's on me.
Yeah, and I will also point out, once again, PSA. Do not send anything at halftime, because every time someone sends something at halftime, we lose. So we got one person who was like, we're on a roll, we're doing this, we're doing that at halftime, and it did not turn out that way. I promise you what I tell you, we are 0% when you email us something good at halftime when we are up.
Don't be Seth. It's Seth Davis who does the Sharpie bit, right?
Yeah, right.
Don't be Seth Davis.
Yeah, right. We Sharpie at like 5 minutes left in the game. Yeah,
former podcast guest Seth Davis. We love him.
Yeah, and former Blue Devil.
And can I also point out, by the way, in addition to me being completely wrong about the shooting, there were a couple other things that I'd said about this game. Remember, Don and I said, hey, first one to 80. No one got to 80. I said, hey, this is going to be Duke's first 80 possession game since 2021. It was only a 74 possession game. Obviously, I talked about the fact that Duke couldn't shoot poorly. And I think if you guys want to start, we could start with this, although it's not technically the good, it's the bad. We usually start with the good. During the game, one of my class of 89 classmates said to me, Jason, who do you want to have the ball in your hand to take the last shot for this team? And I said, Cooper Flagg, no question about it. It's got to be Cooper. I said, he doesn't have to shoot it. He could be creating for someone else, but the ball needs to be in Cooper Flagg's hands. I was adamant about that with my friends, and I was wrong. I don't know that it being Cooper's hand was wrong, but it didn't work out.
Yeah. We will talk about that in the bad. Let's do what we normally do and start with the good, because I want to start with the fact that, first of all, this was a very competitive game. Like, from a neutral standpoint, the people who were texting me who had no affiliation to Duke or Kentucky saying, man, this is a monster game and this is like a Final Four type of game. It absolutely was. Back and forth. You saw the strengths of both teams. And really, I think, despite the fact that our outside shooting wasn't falling, during the game, we found a home in the paint. I thought we did very well. 46-26, we outscored Kentucky inside the paint. We had guys who were finding, trying to find the rhythm in some other way other than what they normally did if they had to, go away from their long jumpers. And I thought, what we did to build our 9-point lead was just tenacious defense. We didn't get them on every single possession, but slowly but surely, I said in the preview, if there was a couple possessions that we can take the ball, get them out of there and go down and score points, slowly but surely we'll build a lead that hopefully, Kentucky will be on their back heels. And sure enough, in the first half, I thought we did a great job at just slowly but surely withstanding the pressure from Kentucky and building a lead to the point where it felt it was 9 points at halftime. But again, sort of if we had some, better shooting, it's a 15-20 point lead at halftime like we normally have, right? And so I feel like this team showed some of that against the best competition we've seen so far this season. Is very early, but this was the test that we wanted. This is the test that we received. And I thought in the first half we did well at performing at that test. Sam?
I'd say first half plus the first few minutes of the second half, Duke showed I don't think this was quite Duke's ceiling for that chunk of the game.
No, it wasn't their ceiling, but just they were playing an average game. Yeah,
exactly.
Continue in a second.
I think that's where I was going is that you saw, particularly, I was impressed with the defensive pressure that Duke was able to apply to a Kentucky team that has a lot of different ways they can score, and I'm impressed by freshmen, like any freshman that comes in, even one that has a good defensive reputation, I automatically discount. In my head, like how good they're really going to be as freshmen, especially early in the season. Flagg, Malawach, and Knipple, we sort of know what we're getting, but we know that they're all going to contribute on offense. All of them are great contributors on defense, and they all were making plays in this game. Con Knipple, I'm particularly impressed with how poised he is on defense and how well he moves, especially knowing that, he's, I don't know, he's the late bloomer, but like he wasn't a top recruit when Duke got a hold of him, right? He's like a fringe 5-star guy. He looks very comfortable. He looks very comfortable defending players who are much more mature than he is, even on a night when his shot in particular was not falling. I really appreciated seeing his poise, and then Malawach, who obviously was dealing with some physical stuff, also was able to make huge contributions. And I know we're not at the play of the game yet, but Malawach's block in the first half has to be somewhere in that consideration for play of the game.
Yeah, for sure. I thought the most important good in this game, and we've sort of alluded to it, is that first of all, Duke weathered a storm. Kentucky came out and was 5 for 5 from 3-point range, and we couldn't throw it in the ocean. And then, but then suddenly, somehow, you looked up at the scoreboard. You're like, oh wait, Duke has a double-digit lead without shooting really well, and with Kentucky shooting very, very, efficiently. So to me, the most important good is that from like the 5-minute mark of the first half until almost the 5-minute mark of the second half, Duke had between like a 6 and 10 point lead that whole time. And it wasn't because they were shooting really well. It was because they were doing everything else the right way. Yeah, they folded a little bit down the stretch, and that's thanks in no small part to an injury situation that left us gassed and left our bench much, much thinner than anyone ever thought it would be. But this is a very young club that was in a tie game with 30 seconds left and actually had the ball. And I see no reason not to think that Duke is going to be significantly better as these young guys get older in the next couple months. And Kentucky's right. Kentucky doesn't want to see this Duke team again. We played C-, maybe D basketball, maybe F basketball on offense, and Kentucky was desperate to stay in this game and find a way to claw their way to a win at the end. I think Duke and Kentucky play 10 more times. Kentucky ain't finding a victory more than maybe once more.
I think the other thing about the defense, and you mentioned that Kentucky started out 5 for 5 from 3, and a lot of them were open shots where there was some miscommunications on defense. Like two guys were going with the cutter and trying to stop the backdoor cut because they had done it very early in the game. And because of that, one guy was left open. They were able to hit threes. I think there was one where Sion James was able to get around the guy. He was trying to get around a pick, but he went underneath, and it just gave him just enough space for them to shoot the three. Right after that, you could see the team kind of got together and said, "Hey, this is what we need to do." And they were very quick on the bench and also in the game about communicating, "Hey, this is how we combat that." And after that, I think they went 1 for 9 the rest of the half from 3. So
Donald, really quick, just to put a fine point on it, because I looked this up. So they started 5 for 5. Kentucky did. They went 5 for 20 the rest of the way.
Right. They did a great job at making sure, again, that small adjustment when that lid closed on the rim for a little bit, that's when we were able to take that lead. And again, the way that and as I get into some of the players, let's talk about Cooper Flagg. 26 points, 12 rebounds, all of them defensive, 2 assists, 2 blocks. Con Knipple had 14 points. Man had 10 points. Tyrese Proctor had 12 points. And a lot of those points came in the paint. A lot of these points were guys figuring out that their shot wasn't working, but hey, I got this lane. I can still get to the rim and I can still get buckets. A lot of those 5-foot jumpers right over defenders off the glass. We saw Con Knipple going up with his left so many times in the lane, drawing contact, getting a lot of and ones. That is, again, when you have a bad shooting night, you need to figure out how to make plays in other ways. And throughout, again, 90% of the game, they were able to do that, despite the fact it felt back and forth, that it felt frustrating that we weren't making those jumpers, especially the wide open ones. They were able to get inside the paint, get points, and really put the pressure on Kentucky to have to play out of their minds to come back and beat us.
Yeah, I liked that. It sort of goes back to the point about how the freshmen, at least the freshmen who are firmly in the rotation, who are all starters, seem to be able to rise to the moment. Say what you will about Duke losing at the end and making a few, mental mistakes right at the end of the game for 38 minutes. Duke wasn't making mental mistakes and the shots weren't going in, but like there's only so much you can do about that, right? You take the good shots, you take them when they're open. Duke was taking lots of open shots. Lots of poise from this team where, yeah, there are some vets here that, Proctor knows what he's doing, and the guys who are coming off the bench all know what they're doing, but the freshmen are all definitely still learning their way through part of this. And so my takeaway, I feel the same way that Kentucky doesn't want to see Duke again, because this Duke team is going to get better as those freshmen, like continue to develop from the good starting point they're at right now. And Jason, I'll take your statement. Duke, we didn't think before this that Duke would have a bad shooting night. I don't think Duke is bound for another shooting night as bad as this one. I think this was just an unlucky aberration for the Blue Devils, especially in the second half.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. Donald, you mentioned about the team finding other ways when the three wasn't going down. One of those ways was Cooper Flagg getting to the free throw line. He was 7 of 9 from the line, including some really big ones in the second half when it was a tight game. Cooper took some bad shots, some stuff that was highly contested, not very efficient, but he did a good job of finishing through contact against a very physical team. And frankly, he was all Duke had on offense for a lot, like the final 10 minutes or so of this game. It was the Cooper show because there wasn't anybody else who was really willing to step up, but he was capable. Everyone's going to focus on the 2 turnovers in the final 30 seconds. I guess it was 3 turnovers actually on his part in the final minute and a half. But he had carried us prior to that in a game where there were few other guys who were sort of willing or able to carry us. And as we talk about players, just because we've rifled through a few of them, I just wanted to note, I thought Tyrese Proctor may have been the only guy on the team who I said had a really good game on offense. He kept us in the game early. We talked about that 5-for-5 streak that Kentucky had from 3. The guy that kept us alive while we weathered that was Tyrese Proctor. He was hunting his drive at times, and mostly those ended up being positive plays. There were a couple that rimmed out and stuff, but I thought he did a nice job of probing the defense. I wish he would have been involved more late. It really felt like in the final 7 minutes or so, suddenly the team forgot that Tyrese was even out there. I don't know if maybe he was tired or maybe just wasn't the scheme. But I thought Tyrese had a pretty nice game. And then the other guy I wanted to mention specifically was Kamen Malawach. Look, he is super, super limited at the moment in terms of what he's attempting to do on offense. But he is a major lob threat. He is a major offensive rebounding threat. And I think one thing people may have missed, when he sets screens, when Duke does a screen and roll thing with him, he comes to the perimeter and he sets a screen. The defense is left with very few good options because they know that if they chase the guy with the ball, that Kamen's going to roll to the basket and we're going to just toss it up there and he's going to thunder dunk it. And Kentucky was like, okay, we're not going to let that happen. But the other side of that was, as a result, when he set those screens, the guy with the ball had a much easier time getting to the bucket. And Duke ended up picking up a number of layups, a number of short jumpers, because the opposing team was like, we're not going to let them throw the lob to Malawach. And as a result, Duke got easy shots the other way. It's almost like Kamen deserves some kind of crazy assist statistic. He doesn't touch the ball, but his mere presence causes a good thing to happen. And I also thought on defense, he was strong. He didn't fall for pump fakes. He's big enough, long enough, and quick enough off the ground that he doesn't have to jump immediately. And I thought, unlike some other guys on the team, he did a nice job not falling for the pump fake. So I really wanted to shout him out. He and Tyrese, to me, probably the 2 guys who had the most positive without any negative.
He also had a couple of times where instead of the dunk, he went for the layup, and not in a soft way, but in these guys knows I'm about to go up and try and dunk this ball. So they were positioning himself to try and block the dunk. And he said, I'm just going to, use my long arms, go around them and lay it in off the glass softly. And so he did that a couple of times, which I thought was good. I think with Proctor, it was reverse of what we've seen in the first 2 games, right? We had just talked about how in the first 2 games, in the second half, he came on. In the first half, he was very quiet. This time around, he got, I think, 7 of the first 11 points for Duke. And then all of a sudden in the second half, It was more not necessarily disappearing act, but he wasn't as involved in the offense there. The last
What?
thing I,
Go ahead. Well, I was going to say one other thing really quick, just because we were talking about Malawach. I do want to point out one thing that I observed being in the arena. When he dunks, it's so ferocious that the basket is like vibrating for a good 10 or 15 seconds after he dunks. He had one dunk in the second half, and I was like, and Kentucky started racing the other direction. I was like, uh-oh, if Kentucky takes a quick shot here, the basket's still going to be moving when Duke gets the ball back. He is that violent of a dunker. It's kind of fun. Duke hasn't had a lot of guys like that.
yeah, there was, and when he, cocks the ball back behind his head, it you see everyone else going, nope, that is a business decision. I will not be in the middle of that. You saw that a couple times. The last thing I did want to mention in the good is that in the first half, especially, we took care of the basketball. Yeah, we were missing shots, but it wasn't because we were turning the ball over. The
One
only
turnover.
turnover in the first half came from a Caleb Foster offensive foul. So we took care of the basketball, and because of that, again, we got possessions. We got something out of every possession, whether it was a shot, a missed shot, or a made shot. We were able to end possessions by taking something, and whether it went in or not is the question, right? So is better that than having it where it was some, we've had first halves where we're turnover laden, we're throwing the ball all over the place, and we can't really get our hands on it. This time around, we were very much in control, and I think that helped us build that lead in the first half, leading into, as Sam said, a few minutes into the second half when Kentucky started to come back. All right, let's switch to the things we need to work on. There's a lot of things we want to work on. Jason, I'll give it to you first since you were there. What do you want to talk about? Because I feel like we could talk about Cooper, but we could also talk about so many other things.
Yeah, I mean, I vacillate on what do I want to lead with here. Is it the shooting? In the second half, we were 29% on our field goals, 9%, 1 of 11, just 9% on threes. And even the free throws, we were 5 of 9, just 55% on free throws. This was a team that could not buy a bucket in the second half at all. So I'm tempted to leave with that. But actually, I think for me, the biggest thing was the fact that our rotation was shortened due to those injuries to Malawach and Sion James. And we just seemed tired down the stretch. Con Knipple played 37 minutes, and I thought he was clearly gassed late in the game. If we have Sion James available for even 5 more minutes in this game, I think Duke probably wins. Both because I think Sion is a very impactful defender, but also a guy who can attack the basket for you on offense. But it just gives guys a little bit more of a break, and I think Duke isn't tired down the stretch. No, there was not a single player on Kentucky who played more than 31 minutes. And look, we said in the preview, this is a team. Kentucky goes 10 deep. Mark Pope wants to play a lot of guys, and they have very, very good players off their bench that they used. But for Duke, because of what happened with Sion James and Kamen Malawach's cramps, our bench was super limited. We only get 6 points from the bench. Malik Brown did have 8 rebounds, 5 of them offensive, but we just didn't get a lot from our bench in this game. And I think it really impacted the entire team down the stretch. And there's a piece of me that wonders, in a game where Duke was struggling so much to shoot from the perimeter, do you maybe try and find a moment, not late in the second half, but is there a moment that you try and see Isaiah Evans or Darren Harris? Are they maybe ready to throw the ball up there from the perimeter? Because no one else was able to, and those 2 guys didn't get a single chance.
Jason, that was the thing that I keyed on as well. And I put it to John Shire, and look, we don't see these guys in practice the way that he does. So as we used to say with Coach K, and I assume that John has adapted a similar approach of, you have to meet. Coach K's thing was always like, you have to meet a certain bar in practice to earn playing time. That playing, it was not just, oh, this guy's not playing well, okay, some guy deeper in the bench, you go replace him just to prove a point. Coach K was going to play the guys that he thought were ready, even if they weren't having good games. Shire seems to have adapted a similar policy. At least he did in this affair where Duke clearly needed help in ways that were not coming through from the guys who were in the rotation. So I think my bad mostly goes to Shire for not trying to experiment a little more with the pieces, especially because Duke's only got two guys who are returning rotation pieces. Everybody else is new. Granted, some of them are like experienced high level D1 players, and some of them are freshmen, but you still sort of have to see what they're playing like. And Duke hasn't had a game like this yet, and Duke doesn't get that many games like this. And so I know that, part of what you're trying to figure out as the head coach in a game like this is, like, one, we want to win, but two, we also want guys to be preparing for more important neutral site games down the road. And so you're constantly having to balance it. And maybe we'll look back up in March and be like, oh, look, Con Knippel's in better shape today than he was in November, because he figured out that, like, conditioning was like the most important thing. Or Cooper Flagg's gonna not make mental mistakes, because there'll be opportunities for him during ACC play or in the NCAA tournament where he has the ball in his hands late in the game in a close situation, and he doesn't turn it over, or he doesn't make the mental mistakes. And maybe the reason that those guys are ready for this is that Shire left them in and let them wear it a little bit. But it certainly stings in the moment to feel like Duke had a great opportunity to win this game, a game against a top opponent in a, like you said, somewhat hostile atmosphere, and scuttled that opportunity by keeping those clearly gassed players in it all the way down the stretch.
There was a point in the game where Cooper Flagg had 2 fouls, Common Malawach had 2 fouls, and Malik Brown had 3 fouls. And I said to myself, and I texted my friend, man, I wish Pat was ready to go.
Yeah.
And Pat did dress, but obviously he hasn't featured in a game yet. And that would have been the moment where, man, Patrick Ngongba get in there for a few minutes just to get us to halftime and get these guys where they're no longer in foul trouble. Instead, we had to lean a little bit more on Malawach, who had 2 fouls, and that might have contributed to the fact that he had cramps early in the second half, right? Like, if he plays a little bit more in the first, I'm sorry, plays a little bit less in the first half, then yes, maybe he's fresher and longer in the second half. But it's just you can't. It's not like I'm blaming Patrick and Ngongba for not being ready, but those little things are where you could the rotation where we say, hey, maybe we throw these guys in there, see what can happen, see what you can do, because the worst case scenario is we're going back to the guys that are on the bench anyway. Right. So what's a few minutes to kind of test the waters in a game like that to see what they can do. And who knows, maybe it's a breakout party for one of them where Darren Harris gets a couple threes and he's the savior of this game. Right. He hits one of those guys has 2 threes. We're winning this ball game, and we're in a much better mood this afternoon. But I think the rotations being shortened for this type of game kind of shows that maybe the trust level isn't there yet for Darren Harris or an Isaiah Evans, or even, again, a Patrick Ngongba who hasn't yet played.
Hey, Donald, if I can continue on, I briefly mentioned the shooting, and I think we have to go there with Duke shooting poorly, and I think that individually in a moment we will talk about Con Knippel and Caleb Foster. But before we do, I want to say one reason I think the shooting struggled in this game was the ball movement and the player movement. And I'm going to put some of this on John Shire. Duke had a poor assist percentage in this game, just 43%. You mentioned we kept the turnovers under control in the first half. Only one. We did have 6 turnovers, which isn't a terrible number, but not a great number in the second half. Granted,
of which 4 in the last minute and a half. So yeah,
exactly.
even then, the whole most of the second half, we were just missing the basket. We were missing the baskets. We were still taking care of the basketball again until the last 90 seconds of the game.
Yeah, but it's worth noting the team that shared the ball better won this game. We talked in the pregame about Kentucky being a team that has a super high assist percentage. They assisted on 68% of their buckets in this game. Kentucky didn't have to work for baskets the same way that Duke did. And I thought it came out in the in-game execution of Cooper going one-on-one again and again and again. There was no variety to what Duke was trying to do. There was no ball movement. There was no player movement. And again, some of that has to be on John Shire. My friend, it's worth noting though, my friend Chris Farrell, who was at the game with me, pointed out that part of it may have been, who else were we supposed to use other than Cooper Flagg going one-on-one? This team just didn't look like it had other options. And I think down there late. The rest of the guys were gassed, as we mentioned. They were missing shots. There was no one else who you could sense was like, yo, give me the, you didn't see Tyrese Proctor like, I got this, give me the ball. You certainly didn't see that from Con Knipple or Caleb Foster. And in that moment, my friend Chris said it was flag or bust, and he busted. But Chris then added something else. He said to me, he goes, you know what? Same thing happened with Christian Laettner against Arizona at the free throw line. And that Laettner was like, I'm never missing a big free throw again. And it made him become, perhaps the greatest clutch player in Duke history. It's possible that Cooper Flagg's going to go, damn it. I tried to go one-on-one. I tried to put the ball between my legs. They just slapped it away. We didn't even get off shots with me trying to take that ball. I'm never going to let that happen again. So we talk a lot about growth. I thought the ball handling, I thought the ball movement, the player movement was bad in this game. I don't know if it's going to be bad ever again, because I think these guys are going to sit down and watch tape of this game over the next few days, and it's going to be some brutal film sessions of, that's a bad play, that's a bad play, why did you do that? They're going to get a ton of that the next couple days.
Yeah, I was going to touch on Cooper in especially the last couple minutes of the game, but like you said, he said after the game, it was an immediate, I think we got stagnant on offense. And he said there were some miscommunications that lead to each stuff, but really the transit, the stuff that they were doing so well in the first week of the season wasn't present because they weren't communicating with each other. They weren't moving around, and they weren't moving the ball around either. You could see in the last few possessions, it was a lot of Cooper Flagg holding the ball, trying to figure out what someone's going to do, and seeing, 9 guys stare back at him. And it's unclear why that was. But again, it could have been just that moment, right, was a little bit too big for this particular team. And as you said, they'll learn from it. Cooper Flagg felt like a guy who, first of all, you mentioned early on, and I know it was a slip. You mentioned it was wrong to think that Cooper Flagg we should want him to have the ball at the end. No, we absolutely want him to have the ball in the end of the game. He is going to win us way more games this year.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
Because of this. I hate that it takes a loss to learn something like that against Kentucky, but if that is what propels us and propels him to be a better, a game manager, right, at that point, a better ball distributor, maybe guys moving around and him directing traffic a little bit more with the ball and having that be a more successful moment time in and time again the rest of the season, I'll take it, because I think he's going to learn from this. It feels like he's already learning from this, and it feels like the trust is there. The confidence is there. It's just, as he said, hey, I did everything that I wanted to do. The play just didn't work out. And, I didn't get the shot off that I wanted. I didn't get the pass I wanted, whatever that was. But he said, we tried it and it didn't work. And that's going to happen in basketball. It's going to happen in life. He's going to get back up. And the next time we see Cooper Flagg in that position with the game on the line, I want him to have the ball. We almost, dare I say, we need him to have the ball, but I also need the rest of the team to kind of put him in a position for success, whether that is shooting the ball, going to the free throw line, or passing it off to somebody for a better shot. All of the guys have to be ready for clutch time. It just felt like at that moment we had a play. It didn't work out, and the play was to get the ball to Cooper. It didn't work out, but next time I have confidence that it will. So I'm not placing any blame on Cooper Flagg towards the end of the game for what he did. I'm not placing blame on anybody, right? Because I think those things happen, but it is incumbent on everybody on that team, from the coaches to the players, to learn from that, to be better than that, and say, hey, in this situation, what could I have done better? And figure out how to make it work from there. Because yes, we're going to have bigger games, right, than this. We have all these games on the road in Vegas, ACC, SEC challenge, and then hopefully down the line in the NCAA tournament, we will have mega moments where these guys will be ready to shine. So I'm hoping that's the case.
Donald, I'll put it a different way. I do want to blame Cooper Flagg for the end of the game. I think part of it's on Jon Scheyer for, maybe he's prioritizing the learning opportunities over the rotation tinkering, but part of it should be on Cooper Flagg, because he is the guy with the hype. He is supposed to be the best player on the team. He's not the player who won ACC Rookie of the Week last week. And I hope, as much as, the announcers and Billis and Schulman last night were just talking about it's not just his skills, it's his attitude that's different. This should be an opportunity for Jon Scheyer, whether it's in a team meeting or one-on-one with Cooper Flagg, to be look, man, you got to be better. Like we're counting on you. You're supposed to be the best here. And if he's wired the way that everyone is saying that he is, that he's such a competitor and all these sorts of things, give him the tough love on this. That like, look at all these mistakes that you made, tired or not, you need to be more prepared for this. And there's a little bit of battle hardening that is important for his development.
I totally agree with you on that. I think he knows that. The reason why I think he knows that is there's one player who showed up for the post game press conference. That was him. He took all those questions, right, about that final play. He took those questions. That is not something the second youngest player in college basketball should be doing, but he did that. And so I will give him credit for understanding immediately that's on me. Even if it wasn't all on him, he's saying that's on me. I got to be better. And I'm going to step in front of these reporters and answer these questions and take this on the chin, because that's what I put myself in this position. It didn't work out. This is what I have to do. So again, the young one's learning. And whether that was a learning moment, I don't know that was a learning moment, but it will be for him, whether the ball had gone in the hole or not.
All right, so let's hit on a couple other guys who have to get mentioned in the bad. It's impossible not to talk about Con Knipple, who seemed like he was in a funk virtually the entire game. He only had one bucket in the entire second half. He had a three-pointer blocked. I honestly felt he shrunk from the moment a little bit. I don't know how much of that was deferring to Cooper. I don't know how much of that was instruction from the coaching staff. Con at least was still attacking at times in the second half. He went to the bucket with the ball a few times when they were playing him for his three, and he's gotten very, very good at that. He just wasn't able to finish them for the most part in this game. But I mean, 5 of 20, 1 of 8. You can't avoid those things. Those are really, really bad numbers. I mean, we've talked about, having letter grades on Duke's offense. We talked about, a C plus kind of game. Well, we now know what an F kind of half looks like for Duke, because I think their second half with the 6 turnovers, 1 of 11 from 3, 26 total points, that's an F from Duke on offense. But in addition to Con, and I love the guy, but I got to call him out. I thought Caleb Foster, this was as bad a game as he probably could have. He had some early assists. He had 4 assists like in the first 6 or 7 minutes of the game. First 11 minutes, actually, it was. And then nothing after that. He missed numerous wide open threes. Con's threes were contested. Cephas was shooting threes with no one on him, like offensive rebounds with his guy helping and things like that. Wide open threes and could not hit them. He missed the crucial front end of a 1-and-1 in the final minutes. It was like a minute and a half, 2 minutes left. It was a tie game, I think, and he missed the front end of a 1-and-1. Ken Pomeroy gives out individual offensive ratings each game, and these are almost meaningless. This is the epitome of small sample size kind of stuff. But his offensive rating is literally a measure of your personal efficiency on offense, points and assists and things like that, instead of turnovers, baskets instead of missing a shot. If you do that, you'll get a high number. If you don't do that, you get a low number. 100 is average. Caleb Foster had a 57 in this game. Now, he's had a couple games worse than that in his career. Last year against Arkansas, he had a game where he was 0 of 5 from the field. He had a game against Arizona where he didn't shoot or record any stats last year, and so he got a 0, which makes sense. But considering this is a game where he played almost 30 minutes, where he took 9 shots, where the ball was in his hands a ton of the time, for Caleb Foster to get a 57 offensive rating, that's terrible. He was a negative out there almost the entire game for Duke. And just by way of comparison, his 57, Kamen Malawach had a 201, a 200 plus offensive rating in this game. Kam was essentially worth 4 times as much as Caleb Foster was in this game. That's a bad game by Cephas.
Yeah, and again, hopefully aberrations that don't repeat themselves and they can get better from that. The one thing I did want to end with on the bad was going back to the bench. We saw the bench shrink to 3 guys, and this is not a call out of those 3 guys because they all contributed in different ways. But between the 3, Sion James, Mason Gillis, and Malik Brown, there was only 6 bench points. And we're used to so far this year having the bench come off and just go gangbusters, right? We've seen them score as many as 50, 46, 50 points off the bench. And so that was a big difference in how we approached this game. The bench was not a team. Again, there was a little bit of drop off when we went to our bench because they weren't contributing by putting the bucket in the basket. And yes, that goes back to the whole team shooting woes. But again, something that I hope doesn't rear its ugly head and become a trend. That's what we're looking for here. Throw some of these things away where we can correct them, and moving forward, they don't become trends, because when they become trends, it's harder to get out of that funk and such. But we really rely on our bench, not just with scoring, but with other things. And while the other things were present in some ways, and of course, Sion James, hopefully he is better, and that he's not missing any time with that shoulder injury that kept him out most of the second half and the rest of the game. But the fact is, we've relied on our bench for scoring, and the scoring wasn't present from our bench in the way that it has been in the first two games. From you two, anything else before we wrap up the bad, Jason?
No. I mean, it's easy to dwell on a lot of stuff, but I think we're rightfully putting a positive spin on these things. And as I mentioned earlier, with 30 seconds left, Duke had the ball in a tie game with a chance to win the game. I think we probably do win that game a lot of the time. And frankly, it took extraordinary effort on the part of Kentucky. Full tip of the cap to them. I thought Kentucky played a really, really outstanding game to be in a situation where they even had a chance to beat Duke. This Duke team is not nearly as bad as they looked at times against Kentucky, and even as bad as they looked at times against a good, very, very deep, very experienced Kentucky club. They really probably should have won, and I'll take that as a good learning experience. This game won't matter at all once we get to March.
It's a real demonstration of how high Duke's floor is, that as bad as Duke was last night, it was still like a game that Duke sort of farted away in the last 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Sam, that's brilliant. That is it. That is brilliant.
As my friend said, the sky is not falling. So let's take that with us. Of course, we got the Wofford game coming up on Saturday. We will preview that later in the week. But first, let's take a quick break. On the other side, we got to talk about something else very serious involving a beloved member of the Brotherhood. More after this. Spark something uncommon this holiday with just the right gift from Uncommon Goods.
That's right, Duke fans. The busy holiday season is here, and Uncommon Goods makes it less stressful with incredible hand-picked gifts for everyone on your list, all in one spot. Gifts that spark joy, wonder, delight, and it's exactly what I wanted feeling. Somehow, they've created a place where you can find the perfect gift for anyone.
Perfect gifts indeed, Jason. I just got an acupuncture mat so that I can hit those pressure points that bother me on a regular basis. And they have a can holder for the shower, so I can relax with my favorite beverage if I need a moment to wash the day away.
Yeah, I wonder what beverage that is. Okay, folks, when you shop at Uncommon Goods, you're supporting artists and small independent businesses. Many of their handcrafted products are made in small batches. So shop now before they sell out this holiday season. And with every purchase you make at Uncommon Goods, they give $1 back to a nonprofit partner of your choice. They have donated, Donald, more than $3 million to date.
That's a lot of money. So to get 15% off your next gift, go to uncommongoods.com/DukeBB. That's DUKEBB. Uncommongoods.com/DukeBB for 15% off. Don't miss out on this limited time offer. Uncommon Goods. We're all out of the ordinary.
Want to shop Walmart Black Friday deals first? Walmart Plus members get early access to our hottest deals. Join now and get 50% off a one-year annual membership. Shop Black Friday deals first with Walmart Plus. See terms at walmartplus.com.
We are back, and before we get to the other topic in our discussion, I forgot about play of the game. So we're going to get to that very quick before we close out the Kentucky game. Jason, what is your play of the game from this one? And there was a couple pretty cool moments for Duke, despite the fact that we're talking about a loss here.
Yeah, and I will freely admit it is harder to find a play of the game when you're at the game than it is when you're watching on TV. It's just a different perspective. You don't get the same replays. You don't get any replays. So I'm not sure that my play of the game is going to jive with what a lot of other people saw, but there was a moment in the first half where Caleb Foster got a rebound off of a play, and Duke raced the other direction, and it ended up with Cephas hitting Sion James for a slam dunk. It was at about like the 11 or 12 minute mark, somewhere in that kind of ballpark. What I remember about it was Kentucky had been hitting all those threes, and when Sion slammed it, Duke tied the game. And I remember thinking to myself, we have weathered this. This was the moment where we've weathered the storm. And Duke from there built out what eventually would become a double-digit lead on Kentucky. But I thought it was a great play. I loved letting Sion have a big moment because he's from the Atlanta suburbs. And I actually asked him. He had about 10 friends and family in attendance at the game. I'm sure they were all very distressed to see his shoulder get hurt and that he wasn't able to play more in this contest. But he had a big moment there for them. And so that was my play of the game, even though probably in the grand scheme of things, I should have picked something in the second half.
Probably. Sam, you mentioned the block of Malawach. Is that your play of the game?
I'll take it. Not that any team is prepping for Duke and not talking about how scary it is to go in the middle against Common Malawach, but this just drives the point home. And this was against, Kentucky, not Maine.
Yeah, that was a good one. I actually have another play involving man that I thought was really good. I believe it was early in the second half. Con Knipple has the ball. He's dribbling into the lane. He's trying to find a way to get his shot off, and he kind of slips and loses the ball. But before Kentucky can get it, as he's falling, grabs it, and in one motion, as he's trying to, right himself, he kind of somehow gets the ball and dishes it to man for a tomahawk dunk. And again, when he found man, there was maybe four guys around him from Kentucky. And then all of a sudden, all of them cleared out because once the ball somehow slipped its way to man, they knew that the play was over. And so I thought that was a really good play about not giving up on the play. And again, as he's falling, as he's thinking, oh man, I just messed this play up, he somehow is able to give a ball to his teammate who's able to finish it for him. I thought that was great court awareness by him and also just great improvisation of making something bad turn into good for that one particular moment. Now, we want to shift gears. We're putting the Kentucky game aside for a second because we want to talk about something that appears to be fairly serious. And a lot of you out there have seen online on Instagram, Kyle Singler, again, a beloved member of the Brotherhood, played the NBA, played overseas. One of the guys who a lot of people think should have his number in the rafters. Has been going through what appears to be some pretty heavy stuff in the form of mental health. He's posted a few videos in the last couple, I guess in the last day or so, that show him fairly erratic in his speech and in talking about things that are going on in his life. I want to give, it's not much we want to talk about here, except first of all, he needs love. We send it to him always. And I will talk a little bit more about that particular aspect of how we can help Kyle Singler. But Jason, I give you the floor first. Anything you want to say about Kyle Singler's recent posts?
Yeah, so there was one video, and then Kyle posted a second one. In both of them, he seems rambling, maybe the wrong kind of word, but he definitely seems distressed. He talks about, being mistreated, abused, neglected a number of times in both of the two videos. He's in an apartment or it might be a house. You're not entirely sure. Doesn't appear to be any furniture anywhere. Like it does not look like a good situation. And it's obviously tremendously concerning. I think that the somewhat positive thing to come out of this is, number one, Kyle posted these because he wants help. He's not expressly saying it out loud, but you don't do this. Because, by the way, he's not a voluminous social media person. In fact, I believe these are the only two videos he's posted on Instagram.
He created the account to post it.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a guy reaching out and saying, someone please help me. And we have seen a tremendous response from the NBA. the NBA Players Association says it has reached out to Singler's family and that it wants to get in touch with him. And that the NBA PA they have mental health people that they work with who they want to get involved in here. And Kevin Love, who knows Kyle Singler from the days when they were both huge stars they're like two of the best high school players in Oregon State basketball history. And they know each other from being in the NBA together and the such. Kevin Love has been very vocal in reaching out to Kyle Singler and trying to see if Kevin Love has spoken extensively about his concerns about mental health and how important it is. So I feel like the right kind of things are happening, and I really hope that it works out for Kyle as a result.
Sam, I know you. Go ahead, Sam. I know you were with him. Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, and part of the reason I wanted to be on the show today was also to sort of express my, my sympathy for whatever was going on, and hope that Kyle gets whatever help that he needs. He was a classmate of mine at Duke. We were in the same freshman hall. We weren't best friends or anything, but we knew each other, and so I'd see him around, and I know, at least from when he was 20 years old, that Kyle's a really nice, caring guy, and I assume he still is, and that whatever's plaguing him right now is something that he can work through. So and anyone that knows him, if you do, send him good vibrations, because it seems like he needs it right now, and we're certainly here and behind him.
Yeah, and again, to kind of cap this, looking at the comments, I think the one thing that I would stress, and unfortunately, I have experience in having to, care for somebody who has, similar mental health issues or struggles, and it's very sad, but it's also something that people need to approach delicately. The two things that I would say that they need to approach it with is without speculation, and most especially without judgment. We don't know the whole story, right? We just know what he's posting and kind of trying to decipher from that. And you will not find that story in the comments of the posts. And the one thing that I saw a lot is people kind of saying like, hey, get some help, or pushing others like Kevin Love saying, hey man, we're here for you. And clearly Kevin has experience dealing with this. And people say, no, you need to go to him, like go find him. That's kind of not the right approach, because that can be taken as disrespect by the person posting it, and a form of love that you may not be wanting to send. I think the one thing that I saw that was very important to understand is Jose Fonseca, whose his Instagram handle is Best Cut Man at MBB. He works in the Duke basketball program, has been around a very long time. He asked a simple question that I think is perfect. How can we help? And I think a lot of people, when they're, struggling, they're, like Jason said, he's reaching out for help. And the best thing to do is to sit back and listen with the question, how can we help? Instead of directing them to do stuff, directing them to do this, directing someone to call them or go to his house, because that might not be the right approach. The approach is to assess the situation and understand what it is he's going through, and kind of be able to understand him and what he's going through and where you may be beneficial. It's the same as we do in life, right? You don't just go over your friend's house and say, you need help. You ask what's going on. How can I help you, have a better day, have a better minute, have a better moment. So I think in the case of Kyle Singler, and for anybody who's going through any sort of mental struggles that are, clearly reaching out, let's listen. Let's, again, not be, what did Ted Lasso say? Be curious, not judgmental, right? That's what I would hope for everybody here. And for Kyle, of course, we don't know if Kyle listens to the pod, but I know when I've interacted with him, he's been a very nice guy. I hope everything in your life is going well. And if you need assistance in any way, we are here to listen. We are here to guide you through it. And I know other people share that love that we have for you as a person. Forget the player, you as a person. So with that, we will leave it on episode 662 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. Thank you as always for joining. Sam, Thank you as always. I'm sorry this was a kind of a melancholy way to bring you back on the show. We will have you back for better days and better moments this season.
Thank you for having me back. And like you said, maybe next time in better spirits.
Yeah. So when Sam comes on, don't think it's because something bad happened, right? It's Sam being on is a good thing. This is his home. He's welcome back here anytime. His shoes still need to be left at the front door along with the rest of ours. For Jason, for Sam, I am Donald. This is now time for the Duke Band to play us out and take us home.